When I married Anna, I thought I'd finally figured life out. At 51, I'd spent years building my real estate business into something I could be proud of. It wasn't easy, late nights, missed vacations, and sacrifices piled up along the way. But it paid off. By the time I met Anna, my work had afforded me a life that was comfortable, secure, and, dare I say it, admirable. Anna was 30 when we met. She worked as an events coordinator for one of my properties, and she carried herself with a vibrant energy that stood out. She was sharp, polished, and had a way of making everyone around her feel like they mattered. I was drawn to her youthfulness and her laughter. It was infectious. I knew the age difference would raise some eyebrows, but I didn't care. Our courtship was fast but intense. Anna seemed fascinated by the life I'd built, and I was equally taken by her spirit. She had this way of looking at me that made me feel like I was the most interesting man in the world, like all those years of grinding had been worth it. When I proposed to her after a year, it felt like the most natural decision in the world. The first year of marriage was everything I hoped for. I'd finally found someone to share my success with, someone who seemed genuinely proud of me. Anna thrived in the lifestyle I could provide, lavish vacations, fine dining, high-end shopping, and I didn't begrudge her any of it. I was happy to spoil her. After all, wasn't that part of the point of success? But things started to shift in our second year. My business demanded more of my time, and I began to notice the subtle changes in Anna. She wasn't as excited about the life we were living together. She started going out more with her friends, filling the hours I couldn't spend with her. At first, I thought it was harmless. I even encouraged it, thinking she needed her own space. I didn't realize that space was turning into distance between us. I first met Jake at one of those social events Anna dragged me to. He was her age, charming in a way that grated on me, though I couldn't put my finger on why. Anna introduced him as, just a friend, but something about the way they interacted set me on edge. I told myself I was imagining things. For months, I pushed the doubts aside. I trusted Anna. Or maybe I didn't want to admit I was losing her. But the signs were there, the late nights, the vague explanations, the way she seemed to light up when her phone buzzed with a text. The house started feeling colder, quieter, even when we were both in it. And then, one night, I couldn't ignore it anymore. She came home late again, her face flushed and eyes bright in a way I hadn't seen in years. When I asked where she'd been, she avoided my gaze and mumbled something about catching up with friends. But when she walked past me, I caught a faint whiff of cologne that wasn't mine. That night, after she fell asleep, I checked her phone. I hated myself for it, but I couldn't stop. It didn't take long to find the texts, flirty, suggestive, unmistakable. She hadn't even bothered to delete them. Jake's name was all over her phone. The confrontation the next day was brutal. I kept my composure, but she didn't deny it. She said she hadn't meant for it to happen, that she felt neglected, that I was always at work. As if building the life we shared was somehow a crime. Her excuses felt hollow, but the pain cut deep. We didn't even fight much after that. There was no screaming, no slamming doors. Just a quiet, mutual understanding that this wasn't going to work. 2 years into our marriage, we signed the divorce papers. I thought that was the end of it. But life, I was about to learn, had other plans. The months after the divorce were a blur. I threw myself into work, as I always had when life became too much to bear. If I wasn't negotiating deals or attending meetings, I was at the gym, burning off my anger on the treadmill. Anything to keep my mind off the emptiness in my home, and in myself. The truth was, I still loved Anna. As much as her betrayal burned, I couldn't erase the memories of the woman I fell in love with. I'd catch myself thinking about the way she used to greet me at the door after work, her face lighting up like I was the best thing that had ever happened to her. Those moments felt like a lifetime ago, though, replaced by an ache I couldn't shake. I didn't reach out to her after the divorce. I figured she'd moved on quickly. She had Jake, after all, and I assumed she was content with her choice. Part of me wanted her to be miserable, to regret everything she'd thrown away. But another part, the part one hated, wanted her to miss me, to realize she'd made a mistake. It was a toxic cycle of emotions that I couldn't seem to escape. 3 months passed, and then, out of nowhere, Anna called me. I'll never forget the sound of her voice that day. It was tentative, almost nervous, like she wasn't sure she had the right to speak to me. She said she needed to talk. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet her. We met at a small café downtown. I arrived early, watching the door with an apprehension I couldn't quite place. When she walked in, I almost didn't recognize her. Gone was the confident, glamorous woman I had married. She looked lost. There were dark circles under her eyes, and she fidgeted with her hands as she sat down across from me. "I'm sorry," she said, barely above a whisper. "For everything." I didn't respond right away. Part of me wanted to lash out, to tell her that sorry wasn't enough. But another part, the part that still cared, just wanted to hear her out. So I nodded, letting her continue. She told me about how things with Jake hadn't worked out. Apparently, the excitement of their affair didn't translate into a real relationship. He wasn't the man she thought he was, she admitted. He was irresponsible, immature, and far less capable of giving her the life she was used to. She didn't say it outright, but I knew what she meant. He couldn't give her the life I had given her. She cried as she spoke, telling me how she'd made a mistake, how she hadn't realized what she had until it was gone. She told me she missed me, missed us, and asked if there was any chance we could try again. I was floored. This was the woman who had shattered my heart, and now she was sitting in front of me, asking me to put it back together. I should have said no. Every rational part of me was screaming at me to walk away, to protect myself from the pain she could inflict again. But there was another part of me, the part that still loved her, the part that hadn't healed, that was tempted. So I told her I needed time to think. It wasn't a commitment, but it wasn't a refusal either. She looked at me with those tear-filled eyes, and for a moment, I could see a glimpse of the Anna I had fallen in love with. That scared me more than anything. When I left the café, I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, unsure whether I should leap or step back. And I knew that no matter what I decided, things would never be the same. The days following my meeting with Anna were marked by sleepless nights and a storm of conflicting emotions. I couldn't ignore the memories of her sitting across from me, her face lined with regret. Her words had been raw and sincere, or at least they seemed that way. But sincerity wasn't a shield against the pain she'd already caused. I kept busy with work, using it as a refuge from the gnawing uncertainty that had taken hold of me. The routine of meetings and deadlines was a welcome distraction, but even then, her voice lingered in my mind. It wasn't just the betrayal that haunted me, it was the idea that she might genuinely be seeking redemption. That thought unsettled me as much as it tempted me. After days of deliberation, I decided to see her again. This time, we met at my house, the home that had once been ours. It felt surreal to have her there again, walking through the familiar space as though she'd never left. Yet everything felt different. The air between us was heavy with unspoken words, with the weight of what we'd been and what we'd lost. As she spoke, she laid bare her regrets and her desire to make amends. Her voice wavered, but there was a quiet determination beneath it. She admitted her mistakes, her misplaced priorities, and how she had underestimated what we had built together. She didn't try to justify her actions or shift blame, and for a moment, I wondered if that was enough. But the hurt she'd caused couldn't simply be swept away. I thought about the nights I had spent alone in the silence of this house, the anger and heartbreak that had consumed me. Letting her back into my life wasn't a decision I could take lightly. As I listened to her, a plan began to form. If we were going to try again, the terms would have to change. Our old dynamic, the one where I shouldered every burden while she floated through life, unanchored, couldn't continue. She would have to prove herself, not just to me but to the life we wanted to rebuild. Over the next few days, I worked through my doubts, weighing the risks and rewards of giving her another chance. It wasn't just about love anymore, it was about trust, respect, and whether she could truly commit to a shared life. Eventually, I decided to take the risk. I laid out my conditions in my own mind before presenting them to her. She would need to find a job, contribute financially, and show that she could be an equal partner in this new version of our relationship. To her credit, she accepted without hesitation. She began applying for jobs immediately, her efforts earnest and focused. She moved back into the house, though we kept a physical distance, treating this period as a cautious reset rather than a return to the past. I watched her from afar, looking for cracks in her resolve, signs that this was another fleeting whim. There was a tentative sense of progress, but I couldn't shake the wariness that had settled into my bones. Her betrayal had taught me to expect the worst, and it would take time, if ever, for that expectation to fade. As the days passed, I found myself in a strange in-between state. There was hope, faint and fragile, but it was tempered by the fear of being hurt again. If Anna was truly committed to earning back my trust, then perhaps there was a future for us. But the road ahead was uncertain, and I knew I had to tread carefully. The first few weeks of Anna living back in the house were nothing short of surreal. She moved her things into the guest room without protest, carefully arranging them as though trying not to disrupt the delicate balance we were attempting to create. The house didn't feel like it used to, instead, it was a space heavy with caution, like a porcelain vase balanced precariously on the edge of a shelf. Anna threw herself into job applications with an intensity one hadn't expected. Every morning, I'd find her seated at the dining table, laptop open, scouring listings, drafting resumes, and sending emails. By the time I came home in the evenings, she'd still be there, surrounded by notes and scribbled reminders. It was a side of her I hadn't seen before, a driven, focused version of herself that seemed to emerge from her desperation to prove she could change. Eventually, she landed a position as a marketing assistant at a mid-sized firm. It wasn't glamorous, and it certainly didn't come with the perks she had once enjoyed as my wife, but she embraced it without complaint. Her first day at work marked a turning point of sorts. She came home that evening looking exhausted but proud, clutching a company ID badge and talking about the tasks she'd been assigned. I listened, nodding in the right places, but I couldn't bring myself to match her enthusiasm. It wasn't that I wasn't happy for her, it was that I still didn't know if any of this mattered. Could a job, an effort, a new routine really erase what had happened? Could it fix what she'd broken between us? As the weeks turned into months, the practicalities of sharing a space with Anna began to reassert themselves. We fell into a rhythm, cooking meals together occasionally or watching television in the evenings, though we always maintained a certain distance. Conversations were polite, careful, like acquaintances making small talk at a dinner party. She seemed determined to prove herself in every way. She'd take on chores without being asked, leaving the house spotless before heading to work. She stayed away from her old social circle, no longer frequenting the bars and lounges she once loved. It was as if she was trying to strip away everything that had led to her downfall, piece by piece. Despite her efforts, I couldn't bring myself to lower my guard completely. Trust is a strange thing, fragile, elusive, and almost impossible to rebuild once shattered. I still found myself questioning her motives, her sincerity, even as I watched her follow through on her promises. The nights were the hardest. Lying in my bed, alone, I'd think about the days when she used to curl up next to me, her head on my chest as we talked about our dreams for the future. I'd think about Jake, about the texts I'd read and the lies she'd told. I wondered if those memories haunted her, too, or if she had compartmentalized them, packing them away in some dark corner of her mind where they wouldn't interfere with her new narrative. One evening, I came home late after a long day at the office. The house was quiet, except for the soft hum of the dishwasher. Anna was in the kitchen, wiping down the counters. She looked up as I entered, her face brightening briefly before settling into a more neutral expression. Dinner was on the table, roasted chicken, vegetables, and a salad. It was the kind of meal she used to prepare when things were good between us, back when we still laughed and talked easily over glasses of wine. I sat down, thanking her quietly, and began eating. She joined me after a moment, the clink of cutlery filling the silence between us. It was a simple moment, but it stayed with me. It wasn't about the meal or the effort she had put into it, it was about the way she looked at me, as though waiting for some sign of approval, some indication that her efforts were making a difference. I realized then that this was as much a test for her as it was for me. She was trying to rebuild the bridge she'd burned, and I was standing on the other side, unsure whether to meet her halfway. Rebuilding a relationship wasn't something that could be done in weeks or even months. It was a marathon, not a sprint. And as much as I wanted to believe that Anna's actions were genuine, I couldn't ignore the voice in the back of my mind reminding me of how easily she had betrayed me before. But for now, we were moving forward, tentatively, cautiously, but forward nonetheless. 6 months had passed since Anna moved back into the house. It wasn't the same as it had been before, but maybe that was a good thing. Our life together was quieter now, marked by a tentative rhythm of rebuilding. She had thrown herself into her new job, contributing financially to the household in ways she hadn't before. I could see the effort she put into every part of her life, a quiet determination to prove that she was worthy of the second chance I'd cautiously given her. As for me, I wasn't sure when the walls I'd built around my heart started to crack. Maybe it was the consistency of her actions, how she came home every day with stories from work, or the way she made a point to shoulder some of the burdens of running the house. Maybe it was the way she stopped seeking approval and just focused on being present, on showing me she had grown. One evening, I found myself sitting in the living room after dinner, flipping through a photo album Anna had left on the coffee table. It was filled with pictures from our first year of marriage, vacations to Europe, dinners with friends, the candid moments that once felt so effortless. Looking at those images stirred something in me. I realized I didn't want to keep living in the shadow of our past. I didn't want my life, or hers, to be defined solely by her mistakes. What we had once was worth saving, and while it would never be the same, maybe we could build something better. That realization didn't come with fireworks or a grand epiphany. It was quiet, like the settling of a storm, when the waters calm just enough for you to start moving forward again. A week later, I asked her to marry me again. It wasn't a grand gesture, just a quiet question over coffee one Saturday morning. She froze, her hands trembling as she processed my words. For a moment, I thought she might say no, not out of rejection, but out of disbelief that I was willing to try again. But then she nodded, tears streaking down her cheeks, and whispered, yes. Our second wedding was a small, private affair. No lavish venues or elaborate guest lists this time, just us, a handful of close friends, and a promise to move forward. The vows we exchanged were simpler, more grounded. This wasn't about fairy tales or perfection, it was about commitment, about choosing each other despite everything. In the months that followed, we worked harder than ever to make our marriage thrive. It wasn't easy, and there were moments when doubts crept in. But we leaned into those moments instead of running from them, choosing to confront the hard truths together rather than letting them fester. Anna stayed committed to her career, and I found myself respecting her in ways I never had before. She wasn't just my wife anymore, she was my partner, someone who stood beside me rather than behind me. And as time went on, the scars of the past began to fade. They didn't disappear entirely, but they became part of the tapestry of our lives, a reminder of how far we'd come. Looking back, I don't regret my decision. Taking Anna back wasn't easy, and it wasn't without risk. But in the end, love isn't about never making mistakes. It's about choosing to try, again and again, to be better, for yourself and for the person you've committed your life to. This time, we were doing it together.